For our conversation today, folks in the Roompact community may or may not know that Roompact is what is called a certified B Corp. So we'll get into explaining, what all that means and, kind of the process that Roompact underwent to achieve that milestone and everything. But I know it's something for me. I've sort of witnessed different companies sort of gaining that certification, and I've always kind of wanted to like dig in about it and actually talk about sort of like what that means and how it is sort of achieved. So I'm very grateful to be joined by the fearless leader of RunePack today to talk more about it. So if you just want to really quick just make a quick intro to folks, just so folks can level set, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Dustin. My name is Matt Unger. I'm the founder and president here at Roompact, and I'm excited to talk about B Corps today.
Yeah. So, for folks who aren't familiar, if you could explain briefly what a certified B Corp is and why it was something that you felt like Roompack should pursue.
Sure, of course. So there's an organization, it's a nonprofit organization called B Labs, and B Labs oversees the B Corp certification process. And to become a certified B Corp, a corporation or a company, a small business has to embody very high standards for social and environmental performance. So, social justice and environmental justice has to be in the forefront of your values as a company. One of the biggest pieces for us also is that a company must treat its employees well. So there's very high standards for things like compensation, all aspects of compensation, things like work life balance. That's all very important to us. And the reason we became a B Corp is there's kind of a two-part story there. So first, my wife, we like to call her a bit of a hippie in a very loving way. She is always very kind of environmentally and socially, those aspects of life are very important to her, and she's just very conscious about it. And she was the person who originally kind of brought this to my attention. Especially when our son was born a few years ago, she would buy products for him, like snacks, and we would see a little B Corp, certified B Corp logo. And she told me how great it was when a company was a certified B Corp. So together we went and we looked it up and we learned more about it. And we said, wouldn't it be amazing if Roompact could do that? So that's kind of the first stage of why Roompact did this. The second stage was Roompact is almost 10 years old now. And for the first 7 or 8 years, something that I realized as a leader is that if you don't intentionally create a culture for a company, a culture is going to get created and you might not like it. So we got to the point where at Roompact, we needed to define our values as a company. And with many of our values, they really just lined up with what a B Corp, a certified B Corp embodies. So it was almost an easy decision for me to make, along with a couple other people at Roompact.
Like you said, it's sort of like just immediately kind of aligned. Like it didn't feel as though it's like, oh my gosh, we're probably gonna have to like bend and twist and change and like make some sort of seismic shift where um, a lot of organizations probably might be like, well, why should I have to go jump through a bunch of hoops to do this? And it's like, sure, that's fair, but you know, I guess it made sort of the connection in my head of like it's almost the same thing of like we can get into that existential conversation of like why would I go to college to get a piece of paper or something, and it's like sure, but it's just kind of like human nature, I think, that we want to be able to be like, okay, there's this stamp which has this implication that means that you have been held accountable to achieve certain benchmarks and these sort of things. Like we need to have kind of that like that pattern or that categorization or something, something that just kind of gives a quick sort of shorthand to say like, okay, they're not just talking the talk, they're also walking it. And yeah, there's going to be like the whole process that what we'll talk about next is just like how you sort of pursued that, because I don't know if maybe this is where you started when you were kind of building the awareness, but like it was something that I thought was maybe just like put upon companies. Like you just kind of like, well, like, yep, this is who we are and choose to be, and they're like, well, that's so great, like you're gonna get this little award or something. But it actually is something that you like, yeah, made the active choice to pursue and follow through to the end. So like, what was that process like? And yeah, I'm very curious to hear.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because the first time I researched the process to become a certified B Corp, I kind of glossed over it and I said, "Oh my gosh, this is going to take a lot of time, and all it is somebody else saying we're a good company, essentially." And the cynical part of me just said, "I don't want to deal with that." But then I let it marinate a little bit. I thought about it a little bit more over the course of months, and I did decide this is something that is really important for us to do at Roompact. Um, and throughout the process, it was the cynical part of me was incorrect because the process was really great because it pushed us to be an even better company. Just going through this certification process, um, it required us to document things, to make unspoken things official. That was one of the big things too. So I would say when we think about the entire process to becoming a certified B corporation, probably the most painful part for us was the first part, and that was making sure we had the right team. So to become a certified B Corp, a company has to embody very high standards for both social and environmental performance, and justice and consciousness. And at the time, I don't think our whole team was on board with that. So I put my foot down and I said, this is something we are going to pursue as a company. And if you're not on board with it, then this company is not going to be the right spot for you. And that was a really difficult transition period as a company. It was the right thing to do. I had no doubt throughout the process, but it was interesting. So the first step was to make sure we have the right people on the team. And then the next step was to look at the B Corp questionnaire. So the first stage of getting certified is to go through a very long questionnaire. So before even filling out the questionnaire, we just, as a team, we looked at all of the questions and we said, okay, where are we going to fail here? And how can we make ourselves better before we even submit the application or submit the questionnaire for the first time? So we put all the questions together in a shared spreadsheet, and we had several hour and a half long team meetings where we just went through line item by line item. Do we do this? Could we improve this easily? Or is this kind of a stretch goal that we want to do in the future? So we put it together as a team. And one of the real big benefits of this was the transparency within our team. Because I'm the president of our company, I'm the founder, but I like to run Roompact very collaboratively. And going through this process transparently with everyone on the team allowed us to see where our weaknesses were and how we could improve those weaknesses. So we did that kind of first version of the questionnaire. And then once we felt we had it at a good spot, I took all of our answers and I inputted it into they have kind of this interface where you answer all the questions. So I inputted it, all of our questions, and you need to make sure that the first version that you submit gets you a certain score on a scale of maybe 120 points. So we made sure that we had, I think you need to get 80 plus points. We made sure that we had enough points. You want to make sure you have some extra points. And to be clear, it's not all about points, it's the processes and procedures that kind of back up those points. So we needed to make sure that we were up to those standards. So we had our score up to a good spot. We submitted it. We were all excited and we set goals on when we were going to become a certified B Corp. And then we had to wait like 6 months because at the time, B Labs, the nonprofit that runs it, was very backed up. And they had a bunch of applications and not enough staff to go through them. So we waited about 6 months. And then after that grueling 6 months of kind of anxious waiting, we heard back. And what you do next is you go through your questionnaire and you essentially get audited by 2 or 3 different people. And each of those people has a different lens of what they're focusing on. They ask for further documentation, which pushes you to create some documentation if you don't have it. And then after that audit, that took probably 2 more months. Eventually, you kind of get the nod, ideally, and you become a certified B corporation. And then that's that. It overall took us um, about 14 or 15 months from the initial team meeting where we said, hey, we're going to do this, through being listed as a certified B corporation, about 15 months.
Wow. What I really liked about that though is that you like preempted and said like this is something that we're going to pursue, because I think I've been in environments where it was just sort of like, hey, so this is a thing that we like, they just told everybody when it was like official. And I can get why you maybe wouldn't want to like preempt. And then if it like, yeah, it takes a long time or longer than you thought, or if it doesn't happen, then people are like, or they just sort of like, talking a big game or something. But like, I don't know if I guess maybe if you can clarify, like, was that something that they like gave as like a pro tip kind of thing is to build that consensus, or did you sort of like understand that by like kind of reading between the lines that if like, yeah, people weren't bought in, that it was going to either like not work or be like you wouldn't achieve that status, or it would be sort of like ineffective if you achieved it?
So they do give guidelines on how to build consensus, and they do tell you that building consensus is very important. I would say a lot of their guidelines are aimed at medium to large companies, especially large corporations. There's five of us at Roompact. So we're very different from all of the other kind of guidelines they provided. So I think in my head, there was just no doubt that we were going to do it together as a team. I would say at one point, when I first looked at the B Corp standards, before we committed to doing it, I did think, there was a little fear. It was, what if we're not able to achieve these? Um, do I really want to bring the whole team on this if this is something we're going to fail? But we got to a point where that failure wasn't an option, where we were going to become a certified B corporation. It could take us 2 or 3 years, but we were going to do it. So getting that buy-in as a team and doing it together, I think was just a really wonderful process, not only to achieving the certification, but also it was just a great team building process. It allowed us to speak openly about what is important to each of us from our employer, essentially. Not only that, how our employer treats us, but also how we as a team act outwardly with clients, with our community at large, with our local community. It was a really great team building exercise.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, just the recognition of like, you know, I'm sure some people pursue it as just a very like kind of transactional, practical thing or whatever. Like, you know, so like that's fine. But seeing it as that tool to build a culture, and not having, because I think, yeah, that's exactly right. Where like it's going to happen in a vacuum, because I think that's just again sort of human nature is like you're going to be seeking sort of cues or something to kind of hold on to, and if you don't have it, then you're going to build it, and those sort of things. So like, um, and that even if like you said, like even if like the head of a company doesn't think that they're like sort of affecting their team or their culture and all that, it's like you are by the decisions you make or you don't make or those sort of things, just how you honestly like how you live your life, how you be like kind of a role model. So like you know, and I guess even that, or like kind of washing any of the sort of emotional hippie stuff or whatever. It's just like, okay, at this point in time, like this could be just, yeah, really effective team building and culture building thing. And then we're actually also going to have like kind of like a tangible thing at the end of it too that sort of like affirms the strides that you made from that, and that it, yeah, just has like a framework of, yeah, like those questions and like the documentation to sort of like codify things and all that. So um yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess then, to try to kind of capture as much, because I think you gave just sort of the kind of pillars of like big kind of tenets and things of what it means to be a certified B Corp. But for Roompack in particular, like what were some of the outcomes for the team, like because of this work? Because I can imagine that there was, maybe a variety of things, big and small.
Definitely. I would say one of the things that is most beneficial, and it sounds so cliche, but I would say we hold ourselves to a higher standard now. We always held ourselves to a pretty high standard, but now it's even higher. And one example I'll give is after we became a certified B Corp, we had a team meeting where it just so worked out that it was at the end of one calendar year. So we were working on our goals for the next calendar year. So that allowed us to set our goals with being a B Corp in mind. And one of the things that came up was how we need to talk to prospective clients. So people who are interested in using our software. Um, we declared, and it wasn't me, it was someone else on our team declared, we need to hold ourselves to the highest standard possible. You'll often find during a sales process there might be lies of omission, or there might be little things here and there where you know that your product isn't going to be perfect for this person, but as a salesperson you almost feel the need to glaze over that. And I would say that's, I've been around sales for software sales for quite a while. I would say that's very common. Well, we said from our sales perspective, we are going to be brutally honest. If you bring something up to us of how you want to use our software, and we know it's not going to work in that manner, we're going to tell you right then and there, even if we lose the sale. We're more interested in our long-term relationship, not only with you, but our industry at large, than we are making a short-term sale. So it really gave us this filter that we use as a team where it's almost as if we try to operate as if a client was looking over our shoulder at all times, in every meeting and just in everything that we do. And along with that filter that we now have, a huge benefit is that our team is all on the same page very easily now. I feel like I could miss one of our company or team meetings and decisions would be made without me that I would have suggested we make anyways. So I think it allows each of us. A big part of it was because we made sure that everyone on the team was on the same page about becoming a certified B Corp. So that naturally filters out some people. And then, kind of on the back end, after going through the process very transparently together, each of us knows our company values and each individual's values. So it makes it easier for each of us to work with each other, um, which is just really amazing and stress free. And it's collaborative, and it just allows us to comfortably just do great work together. And then kind of another, there are several other kind of sub benefits that have come out of becoming a certified B Corp. All of them are just because of this new lens that we now look through. Um, I would say one tangible example is an initiative that we have now called 1% for Student Affairs, where this is an initiative that we created for vendors. So far, we're the only vendor who's doing it, but we have a commitment to donate 1% of our overall sales. So this isn't profit; it's overall sales, whether we're profitable in a year or not. We will donate 1% of overall sales to nonprofit student affairs nonprofits. So last year, we made most of those donations to the Akuhoi regionals, because we want this money to go towards probably lesser funded nonprofit organizations where it can have a bigger impact. So we've donated now tens, between last year and this year, tens of thousands of dollars to student affairs nonprofits. And the thing with 1% for student affairs is that we can receive nothing in return. So we often see that vendors happily give money to nonprofit organizations when they get something out of it, whether it be advertising or a better spot in the exhibit hall or what have you. I would say that's kind of an easy way to give to these nonprofits. It's more difficult when you get nothing in return. So our major stipulation for 1% for student affairs is that we get nothing in return. It's been offered to us, and we've said no, we can't take it, which pains you a little bit because you want to accept that recognition, and it's a little bit awkward, but we say that we cannot take it. So we have tried to get some other vendors to sign up for 1% for student affairs. I would say it's a tough sell. We're working on it.
Yeah, that is so funny to me because I think, yeah, like it recognizes to me, like, or, sort of makes it clear. how foreign of a concept that is for like this space. Because like there's big companies like Salesforce and stuff like that do something similar, but just like that you're like, no, yeah, we're giving this money, it's a donation, no strings attached. Like, and they're like, like a sponsorship. So like you're gonna, it's like, no, 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 like just straight up, like here, and yeah, I mean that is like such a very again kind of tangible uh part, I think, yeah, like I think that people can kind of point to where it's like that is very much a distinguishing, feature of this status that you have. And um yeah, I mean it's just really awesome because it feels like that while it is very foreign, it's a very simple concept and theoretically it would be very easy for any company who's sort of just like, okay, we get it, okay, like we're going to do that. And it's just like just set that up as part of your procedures and everything, and then you can really um yeah, kind of uplift that. And it's sort of as a kind of rising tide lifting all ships, like you're making that kind of investment into the field. So um yeah, that's really awesome. um well, and I know something else too, like that I think is kind of a, if I recall from like uh prior conversations, like even having like your Ikuhai intern, like you know the philosophy like applying to even just sort of like that, because it's like they are an employee even just over that very short period of time. Like it applies everywhere all the time always. Like so it's just is that very like enveloping, like this is who we are. Which I think again is just like a refreshing part of it, because that would be immediately sort of like maybe one of those moments where like you can um hold each other accountable like on a team, where it could just be a blind spot where it's like, no, 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 like even the intern, like we got to keep consistent here. So uh yeah, but just any of those little details, because I think yeah, like some people might again just look at this as being just a very like sort of highfalutin kind of thing, but it's like it has these really direct manifestations. And I think something I'm curious about, if you can kind of speak to this at all, is like working remotely and like how that kind of factors into sort of like any kind of like environmental sustainability things. Just because like it's something that I've always thought of, and I don't know if a lot of people have really either like quantified it or like affirmed it as like, well, if this is sort of how we work, then it actually does have impacts around like people having to commute and like greenhouse gases with like physical space or something. So I don't know how that maybe showed up for you all.
Yeah, that's a good prompt, because that is one thing that we kind of struggled with throughout the process, because the process of becoming certified B Corp is not very remote friendly. So the process assumes that a company's in one location and you all work from that one location. So we ran up to some difficulty there. Um, One thing that we do that is really important is that we are carbon neutral as a company. And this is another thing that came from this process. So at the end of every year, we have a shared spreadsheet where we go into the shared spreadsheet and we work on each individual's carbon emissions. It includes their office at home, and it essentially factors in electricity and water and other consumables that they use in their home because that is their office location. So we'll put all that together, and we also put together our team's travel on that spreadsheet. And then we have a different organization called We Are Neutral that helps us process all of that and then work with the carbon offsets on the back end. So that kind of came from this process, and working remotely put a little kink into it, but we were able to overcome it. One of the other difficulties with working remote was a lot of the B Corp standards revolve around your local community. And we essentially have 5 local communities. And the questionnaire isn't really built for that, because it wants you to put all your resources behind one local community, and it doesn't account for having 5. So one of the ways that we try to kind of support this is when we meet as a company twice a year at minimum. And at least once a year, we'll do some sort of volunteer opportunity together wherever we are. So we kind of consider our local community to be where we are gathering. Wherever we gather, we also try to purchase local goods. If we give any goods away, things like, I don't know, cookies to a client at a conference, we will always source local areas. We also try to find other B Corps in these areas that we can buy from. So we just had our users conference in Baltimore, and in Baltimore, we were able to find a coffee company that is a fellow B Corp, and we were able to get coffee from them and give it to our clients for our users meetup. So it's given us some challenges, but I would say for me those are fun challenges. It's different from what I usually do day to day, so I really enjoy doing that piece of the work. um, so those are the difficulties I would say that we ran into being a remote company. We also really think about our carbon emissions now, and we had never thought about it before, because we usually go to, I would say before COVID, we were going to up to 15 conferences a year, and then 5 to 10 campus visits a year. And we have really, as a result of working on carbon neutrality, we really try to keep it down, because purchasing carbon offsets is great, but it's even better to never use that carbon in the first place. So we think about it much more intentionally as a team now. Of We just had a conference where it could have made more sense for someone else to go to this conference, but one of our software engineers went to it because he's closer and it required less carbon for him to go there. So it's kind of flipped some of our thinking on its head, and I think it's really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, and then those are like the little bit of legwork that has to go in. It's like it's because like society has not really like acclimated to that idea of sort of yeah, like it is just kind of like you know do whatever you need to, no matter the cost or the impact and those sort of things. But like yeah, I think it things worth having, taking effort, and some of those kind of adages. But um yeah, I've heard of other companies doing similar things. Yeah, the carbon offsets are like because I think they're maybe sort of hitting like in the same goal. I think I've seen like renewable energy credits. Like you can even do that for your own home. Of sort of whatever the kilowatts you use with your energy provider. You buy sort of equivalent renewable energy credits to help sort of prop up more sustainable energy. But yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things where like I think that's the key too. Is you would hope that people are using the least energy possible. So like that's kind of like the core. So I appreciate you mentioning that as well. So as we're wrapping up though, what are any future goals that you have from this? Because I guess just even looking ahead, and I'm presuming maybe there's kind of like recertification or revisiting or anything like that, or just if you sort of maybe even born out of the original process, things that you are still sort of like striving towards.
Right. So there is a recertification requirement every 3 years. Um, Internally, we've decided that we're going to kind of review our score annually. So for our first year, right out of the gate, we planned on increasing our certification score by 10%. Um, and when I set that goal, it seemed like it would be easy. It has been anything but. To get eight, we had our original score was in the 80s, so we had to add an additional between 8 and 9 points. Um, we're at the end of this year, and I think we've done it. There's nowhere to put for us to put that publicly in the B Corp website, but they were improvements that we got to make, both all like socially, environmentally, and when we think of our team and compensation. So I think that was a really great goal, and we'll continue to push ourselves in regards to just our B Corp score. But then I would say the other thing that we really, really, really are interested in is being more public about how we do things at Roompact and encouraging other vendors to do the same. I think that when Roompact came into this business about 10 years ago, one of the things I always said was that we are different. We're not your everyday vendor, which I think is what every vendor says. So whenever I told people that, they just kind of, okay, yeah, great. But we are trying to walk the walk. And I think the best way to do that is by just showing, by being an example, showing other vendors what can be done, and then really, when our clients see how we act as a company, I think it raises the standards for other vendors. And I think that's a really big goal of ours, is just to show our clients that vendors can be different, and try to work with other vendors to help them bring their standards up as well. One of the things that we're also interested in is working with our clients and working with practitioners of how they can take some of these B Corp standards and apply them to their department. I think that's a little bit more difficult because you might have less control over your department than I do over our small company. But I think that there are ways where we can trade notes with practitioners and hopefully kind of show them some of these innovative things that we're doing and also learn from their practices.
I think that's a great idea. 'Cause I think, yeah, it's just like a uh, framework that can facilitate, yeah, like knowledge sharing for, yeah, like your sort of user summits, or out at any other conferences where it's just like, okay, like we're always going to try to leverage like those annual sort of self audits that you're doing and improvements that you're doing, and because I know just talking with Paul and like for our like reboot episode that came out, where it's just like this podcast, even just being that sort of like being kind of a good partner to the field and knowledge sharing and those sort of things. Like so that sort of that value of knowledge sharing and not taking it as like proprietary things that you're doing, like yeah, again, like the world will benefit if more people were implementing things like this and everybody was a B Corp and all that. Um so yeah, I mean, that's really awesome, and I think, again, I don't know if that's something that you kind of thought of, or if they kind of, like, again, give the pro tip on, because I think, like, that sort of, like, recertification, if it's like, you did all the things, but then you kind of, like, didn't touch it over that time, and you're like, "Oh, man, we gotta, like, hustle again and try to, like, get everything in order." It's like, no, yeah, like, keep sort of, like, that continuous improvement kinda inching onward and, yeah, trying to embody those values every day, um so that's great. I mean, I appreciate you sharing so much about this journey that you've been on and the continual strides that you're making to be the best B Corp that you can be. And so we'll have more information about uh, uh, B Corps, and because I know we've written on it a little bit too, and just the official stuff in the show notes to check out if you are interested. But yeah, just thank you so much for hanging out and sharing all the stories.
Likewise. Thanks for sharing our story. I appreciate it, Dustin.